Who likes donuts? In a little while, we'll be all having donuts, but I'm going to get the jump on you. Freshly picked up by Chris this morning. We appreciate that. Very fresh. Although I have just had a cough sweet, so it tastes a little different than I suspect it was supposed to. This morning I'm going to be talking about donuts. Sea captains, mathematicians, slanty rooms, and black holes. And Jesus. That sounds like a lot, so I better get into it. Has anyone ever been to a Krispy Kreme donut place and stood by the window of the production line of donuts? The one in Gateshead used to have the production line going. They've closed it off since COVID, which is such a shame. I used to stand there, looking at the donuts, picking the one I was going to have. Although I'm pretty sure the ones you saw were the ones that got boxed off and went away. But they have this wonderful conveyor belt system. From start to end, a machine does it all. But that's not how donuts began, with machines. They actually go back to, you didn't know you were going to learn this morning, 17th and 18th century Dutch immigrants to New York. Or at least that's where Americans say donuts came from. But I assume these immigrants, before they went to New York, already knew how to make them. And they were fried balls of dough. I'm sorry, I have sugar everywhere right now. They were fried balls of dough called olykoeks, which means oil cakes, which I have to say is not as good a name as donut. I don't know if they'd have caught on the same way if we called them oil cakes. Back then, they weren't ring donuts like this, but they were balls of dough. Never used to have the hole in them. I've done it again. So, the donut hole was not originally part of the donut. I can't see you guys. Hold on. There we go. Got you. The donut hole was not a part of the original donut. Which made me wonder, where does the donut hole come from? Well, there is one man who takes credit for the donut hole, and his name is Captain Hanson Gregory. And he was a ship's captain. That's the guy there. Now, I don't know if seeing a picture of him puts you off donuts a little bit. He was a ship's captain, and he is the guy who apparently took this snack and added a hole to it, so that it would be easier for him to steer a ship. He pierced it on the spoke of the wheel. And he achieved the first donut hole by skewering a donut on a ship's wheel. Now, I don't know if that's true, but he is definitely the guy who gets the credit. In fact, in an interview 50 years after that, he looked back at this moment and he described it as the first donut hole ever seen by mortal eyes. Which is very dramatic for a donut. I can picture him, tears in his eyes, describing this moment where he skewered a donut on a ship's wheel. The first donut hole was created by removing something from it. And for years, that's how you made donuts. You had your dough, and you cut a hole in it and removed the center. You could do it with like a cookie cutter sort of thing. Now we do them with machines, and they pipe the dough out in the right shape. But if you're making a donut at home, and I encourage you to try this, you want a hole in the donut, you've got to take the middle out. Now, there may be some of you this morning who are asking, why on earth is Luke talking about donuts? Where are we going with this? Well, that's a good question. I want us to think for a moment about the hole in the donut. The hole is not the donut's natural state. Something had to be done to the donut to get the hole. Something had to be removed. And you see, we are a bit like ring donuts. In us, there's a hole. Something missing. It is not our natural state, but something happened to each of us that created a void. There's a phrase you might have heard before, I'm sure you have if Christians try to witness to you. That mankind has a God-shaped hole inside them. And it's a hole we desperately try to fill. Chris and Karen mentioned that in their lives. That in each person there is an emptiness. And we spend our lives doing anything we can to try and fill that hole. To try and fill the emptiness. Now I agree with this. I think this is true. But this is not a phrase that appears in the Bible. Sometimes we quote it to people like it is, but actually it's not. I think we can certainly come to this conclusion from things we read in the Bible, but the phrase itself is not there. Now that got me wondering. This might be a little bit of a doorway into how my brain works, I'm sorry. Thought if it's not in the Bible, who said it? If I'm going to quote somebody, who can I quote? Well, that proved to be a lot easier said than done. Because a lot of people credited with quoting this, never actually said it. They said something similar, but they never said it. So then I went down the Google rabbit hole. And I'd like you to join me for a moment as we go down the Google rabbit hole. Some people said that it was St. Augustine. And you can find, if you go on Pinterest, loads of lovely pictures with him quoted as saying this. Now, Augustine was a theologian who was a very important guy in the early church and was one of the big thinkers of the early church, which I think is why that picture has light around his head. Unless he is actually on fire, I'm not 100% sure. He said a lot of things that were great. I mean, this guy is the guy who said, right is right, even if no one is doing it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it. That's good, I like that. But he never actually said anything about the God-shaped hole. What he actually said was this: you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you. It's not the same, but it's close. He's speaking here that we were made for God. We were designed to be in connection with God. And he's saying something's happened to us, where that connection with God has been lost. And as a result, we've lost our peace, that our hearts are restless. Have you ever been restless? You know, when you just can't get comfortable. My legs do that sometimes. Where you say, come on, legs. The rest of me is relaxed. What's with you guys? Augustine's saying that's what our hearts are like. That there's this something out of kilter in our lives. Something that is like an itch you can't scratch, or a sadness that can't be cheered. That can only ever be put back into balance with God. And we find that only in God because we were designed for relationship with God. So of course, outside of that, nothing is going to satisfy. Nothing is going to feel right. Another guy who is credited with this quote is a guy called Blaise Pascal. I love that name. You know what? Even if I didn't know anything about him, just based on his name alone, I think this is a guy that I want to hear more from. What a name. Pascal has a triangle named after him. Can anyone tell me what the name of the triangle is? It's Pascal's triangle. I mean, I thought someone would take a stab at that, but okay. And also a coding language for computers. This guy lived in the 1600s, and he was a mathematician, a physicist, an inventor, and a Christian. That's right. Science and faith are not incompatible. Hear me, Mitch? Man of science over there, and Anita. There's plenty of people of science in here. It's not incompatible with faith. This is the guy who discovered that space is a vacuum above our air. He was one of the inventors of the mechanical calculator, which led eventually to computers. He invented the mechanical calculator before he was even 19. I mean, that's a high achiever, isn't it? And he was also a writer of some wonderful quotes. I mean, this guy's got some zingers. Isn't it, this one? Kind words do not cost much, but they accomplish much. Well, like that. Could do with learning that one maybe a bit more, couldn't we, sometimes? What about this one? All men's miseries derive from not being able to sit quiet in a quiet room alone. There we have somebody in the 1600s describing the problem with social media before it's ever invented. I used to have a boss, and he used to describe Twitter. He said Twitter was invented by people who don't know how to be quiet even when they're by themselves. But it's true. I tell you. Well, a quote he didn't say was one about a God-shaped hole, even though people will quote him on it. What he actually said was this, and this is good as well. I love this one. What else does this craving and this helplessness proclaim? But there was once in man a true happiness, of which all that now remains is the empty print and trace. This he tries in vain to fill with everything around him, seeking in things that are not there the help he cannot find in those that are. Though none can help, since this infinite abyss can be filled only with an infinite and immutable object. In other words, by God himself. Oh, that's good. He's saying that once in man was true happiness. It's gone. And all that remains of it now is the empty print and trace, the shadow of it. That's the donut. That's the person with something missing, something removed where something should be. Something should be there. And sometimes we try and find something that will help, that will fill this. He describes infinite abyss. But it can't be filled because all it keeps doing is sucking in more and more into itself, because only something infinite can fulfill the infinite abyss. And he says it's God. Only God can do it. See, Pascal hits upon the very problem that mankind faces. You know, these quotes, these are from guys hundreds of years ago, but they touch on the human condition in any time, because these are universal truths for all of us. It's a problem we still have today. So nobody said the exact quote that I can find. But many people have pointed out the exact problem. So with that in mind, since nobody credited with it actually said it, and nobody seems to have claimed it, I'm going to stand on the mountain of this quote and claim it. I said it. If you want to use this quote, quote me. So let me actually say it. There we go. That was me back in the 1600s. Every person has a God-shaped hole in them. Something that we know that is missing, and we know it. I can't even quote myself right. We try to fill that hole with anything that we can find. But many of those things do us more harm than good. But the only thing that can fill the God-shaped hole is God himself. And you can literally quote me on that. There is a hole in us that is not there by design. It's a hole where something used to be, and it was taken away. The Bible explains that sin separates us from God. As Augustine said, we were made to be in relationship with God. So what's sin in our lives? And when I say sin, I mean the things we've done that are wrong. The times we've chosen our own way. The times we've done our own thing. The times we've ignored God's voice. The times we've hurt other people. The times we've been selfish. And I don't know if anyone can put up their hand and say they've never done any of those. I know I can't. And sin tears a hole in us. Our wrong choices cause a tear in the very essence of who we are as people. And look, we know it's there. I don't need to tell you it's there, because you know it's there. We are all aware of that emptiness inside and the craving we have to fill it. So we do all we can to try and numb the emptiness. For each person, it's different. For some, it's drink, narcotics. It can be sex. It can be relationships. It can put the energy that we put into enjoying our life. Like trying to wring every last experience out of the bucket list. Trying to experience everything that life has to offer. It doesn't just have to be those things. It can be work. It can be success. It can be family. It can be forming your body into the best it can ever be. Not a problem I've had. I won't go on listing, because the list is actually as long as human experience. The trouble is, none of it fills. None of it satisfies. And when we're alone in bed, or in quiet moments, when the experiences stop, we can feel it. It's there. The hole. For some people, it's driving your car too fast and too loud. Nothing fills it. Because like Pascal said, it's an infinite abyss. So it's not quite as much like a donut, I suppose. It's like a black hole. You know, black holes are very strange things. Something used to be there, but it collapsed. And it left a hole in the universe. You know, the gravitational pull in a black hole is so great, not even light can escape it. The black hole sucks everything in its vicinity into itself. Trying to fill a black hole with anything that's the hand is never going to happen. That black hole is the emptiness inside all of us. It's the realization that the world is not right. And we are not right. You know, we all discover the black hole at different times in our lives. And with the discovery, our innocence fades. Our childhood fades. And once we notice it, it stays there. The black hole is that voice in the quiet night that tells you to despair, to give in. And just as you'd expect from a black hole, it grows and it swallows all the light until all you feel is the darkness left behind. Some try to ignore it, convince themselves it's not there. I'll be optimistic. Others embrace it and become brooding. Many do all they can to numb the presence of it. Drink, drugs, sex, a constant supply of experience. Even sometimes pouring your heart out on social media and desperately waiting for someone to like it, someone to respond, someone just to show how much they care. Or to do that, you know, are you okay, hon? Anything to numb the deafening silence of the black hole. But then the next high needs to be bigger than the last. You've got to double down. Because when you stop, the black hole will grow. And no matter how hard you try, the quiet of the night always comes. The times when the distractions of the day fade, and we remember that the black hole is still there. The world is not right. We are not right. The darkness swallows the light. Running doesn't work. Numbing doesn't work. I tell you, the black hole will suck all your energy in your life. And it's sapping. It's exhausting. And what can we do about it? The answer is nothing. But thank God, Jesus did do something about it. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden." I don't know about you. That's described me at many points in my life. Weary and heavy laden. Well, Jesus said, "Come to me, and I will give you rest." Jesus came to fill this hole, not by throwing as much stuff in it as possible, but by dealing with the reason that the hole is there in the first place. Jesus came to give us rest by restoring the connection that we have with God, by filling the infinite void with the infinite one. You know, Jesus didn't just come to fill the hole. He came to make us whole. And that works much better written down. But first, there needs to come to a realization that things are off. Things are out of kilter. We used that term when we talked about Augustine, and it's something in our lives we have to address first. We have to acknowledge something is not right. Something's off, and we have to acknowledge the black hole exists. I'm going to switch metaphors just for a moment from donuts. Is that okay? We're going to talk about optical illusions instead. Anyone ever been to Keswick? Yeah. Anyone ever been to the Museum of Optical Illusions in Keswick? Anyone? There we go, one or two. Those who've been to Keswick and not been there, you've missed a treat. It's a lot of fun. You, for example, can decide you look upside down in a room. That looks like that took all my strength to do, but actually the real photo looks like this. Or you can go in another room that makes one person look huge and one person look absolutely tiny. And there's one room in there that absolutely messes with your head. The whole room is tilted. I am standing straight there. In fact, we can level that. There we go. But the whole room itself is tilted. I don't know how big a tilt that is. I think that's got to be 40 degrees. And as soon as you walk into this room, everything feels wrong. Your body goes out of balance and you suddenly feel heavy. Your eyes want to tilt with what they see. Your inner ear goes nowhere. And you start to feel sick. You're fighting against falling down the whole time. I'm standing upright there. It was so hard to do. It's absolutely disorientating because what you think is right, which is the floor, is wrong. The floor is a lie. And you have to realize that you need a different floor. You need a solid base. And the second you get out of the room onto the real floor, everything feels right again. I know this seems like a roundabout way to describe it, but this is the best way I could think of. That's what it feels like to come to Jesus. It's the realization first that everything's wrong. What you thought was right is wrong. The floor you've been on your whole life is a lie. You're confronted with Jesus and you have to reassess who you thought you were and realize actually you need to change. What you thought was right was wrong. The realization that you thought you were a good person. You come confronted with Jesus and you realize that's not true. You feel like you can make it to heaven on your merit. You stand in front of Jesus and you realize that's not true. It was a false foundation. Change starts by realizing we need to change. We can go back to St. Augustine for this one. I love this. There is no saint without a past, and no sinner without a future. We realize the things we've done, choosing our own way, making selfish choices. The Bible calls it sin. That is what tore the whole. That's what threw everything off balance. And look, I'm not saying that to judge anybody. It's the human condition. But there's no saint without a past. Jesus came and he died to heal our sin. And then the balance can come. You can have everything back in place again. We can have peace. We can have wholeness. Because we can find it only in Jesus. And I thank God there might be no saint without a past. But there's no sinner without a future. I'm going to ask us just to pray for a moment. Can we bow our heads? I don't know this morning what it is that's tried to fill the hole in your life. But I know this. The hole's there. And I know anything that we try to fill that hole with won't work. Because we can only really be at peace when we are at peace with God. I wonder this morning if there's anyone here who maybe for the first time acknowledge the black hole is there. Or maybe actually you've known the black hole's there for a long time, you just didn't know what the solution was. I tell you, He is the solution. Jesus said He is the way, the truth, and the life. And you can have that life. You can have the whole gone when you come to Him. I wonder if there's anyone here that wants to come to Jesus this morning. I'm going to make this super easy for you. All I'm going to ask you to do is raise your hand. I'll see it, and then I'd love to have somebody come pray with you. Is there anyone this morning who would like to say to Jesus, I know I'm incomplete. I need you, Lord. Fill that hole. Father, I just pray that, Lord, as we go, that, Lord, we will go knowing that, Lord, what is incomplete in us can be made complete with you. Amen.